Hello, today we'll do the lesson Just Lather, that's all. We had this lesson in the second period textbook of 2001 2002. So the story is actually a short story. It is written by the author Hernando Tellez. So we'll read the story. It says, he said nothing when he entered. The word he refers to uh, a character in the story, and he enters a shop. Continues, I was passing the best of my razors back and forth on a strop. The narrator of the story, that is I, who is referred to as I, is a barber. We know he is a barber because he was passing the best of his razors back and forth, up and down on a leather strop. In those days, the razors was sharpened by by rubbing them up and down on a leather belt. So that's called a strop. When I recognized him, I started to tremble. So the narrator, who's a barber, recognizes the man who has entered the shop, and that man puts fear into the narrator. He starts to tremble, but he didn't notice. So the person who's come into the shop didn't notice the narrator's fear. Hoping to conceal my emotion, I continued sharpening the razor. So the narrator wants to hide his fear. He continues to do what he was doing, that is sharpening the razor. I tested it on the meat of my thumb. The meat of the thumb is the ball. So he just nicks the razor on the ball of his thumb and then held it up to the light. He holds up the razor to the light to see the light glint or shine on the razor sharp edge of the blade. At that moment, he took off the bullet-studded belt that his gun holster dangled from. So the person who comes into the shop has a gun holster. A holster is a belt with a compartment for a gun, and the belt is studded with bullets all around it. He hung it up on a wall hook and placed his military cap over it. So the person who enters the shop who hangs up the gun belt and places his military cap over it. Then he turned to me, loosening the knot of his tie, and said, it's hot as hell. Give me a shave. He sat in the chair. So the person who comes into the shop, he's a soldier or he's related to the military. He's been moving around in the hot sun and it's probably afternoon. So he wants a shave from the barber. So he sat in the chair. I estimated that he had a 4-day beard. The 4 days taken up by the latest expedition in search of our troops. So the narrator glances at the beard of the soldier and he estimates, he guesses the beard has been growing for 4 days. And those 4 days were probably spent in search of the troops of the narrator's side. It is a war situation. The situation is that of a battle, and the barber is on one side, and the soldier who's coming to the shop is on the other. So the soldier has been searching for the troops or the soldiers of the narrator's side. His face seemed reddened, burned by the sun. So the soldier has been riding in the sun, so his skin has become red and is burned by the sun. Carefully, I began to prepare the soap. So, the soap is the shaving soap. I cut off a few slices, dropped them into the cup, and mixed a bit of warm water and began to stir with the brush. So I cuts off a few slices of the shaving soap, mixes it with a bit of water, and begins to stir with the shaving brush so that the foam rises. Immediately the foam began to rise. The other boys in the group should have this much beard too. I continued stirring the lather. So the barber wants some customers, so he tells the soldier that the other soldiers who have been with him should have beards as thick as the soldiers, so that he can shave them off. But we did all right. We got the main ones. We bought back some dead, and we got some others still alive, but pretty soon they'll all be dead. So the soldier gives a report of what has happened. He said the expedition was successful. The main ones, that is the ringleaders of the enemy group, have been rounded up. Some have died, some have been killed, and some others are alive. But soon they will all be executed. How many did you catch? I asked. 14. We had to go pretty deep into the woods to find them. But we'll get even. Not one of them comes out of this alive. Not one. So the soldier says that 14 soldiers have been captured by his troops, and they were hiding deep in the woods. But pretty soon they'll all be caught, and not one of them will come out of the incident alive, not even one. He leaned back on the chair when he saw me with the lather covered brush in my hand. So the soldier leans back on the headrest of the chair in the barber shop when he sees the lather covered brush in the barber's head. I still had to put the sheet on him. No doubt about it, I was upset, says the barber. So the barber is upset because his troops, the troops on his side, have been caught. I took a sheet out of a drawer and knotted it around my customer's neck. So he takes a sheet out of the drawer and knots it around the soldier's neck. He wouldn't stop talking. He probably thought I was in sympathy with this party. The barber says that the soldier doesn't suspect that he is on the side of the troops who've been captured, so he doesn't stop talking. He probably thought that the barber was in sympathy with the enemy party. The town must have learned a lesson from what we did the other day, he said. So they have done something. They have held a show in the town, and the whole town must have learned a lesson. Yes, I replied, securing the knot at the base of his dark, sweaty neck. It was a fine show, eh? So they've held an exhibition in the town. Very good, I answered, turning back for the brush. The man closed his eyes with a gesture of fatigue and sat waiting for the cool caress of the soap. So Soldier closed his eyes with a gesture of tiredness, and he started waiting for the soap to caress his chin. I had never had him so close to me. So the barber now has the soldier in his power. The day he ordered the whole town to file into the patio of the school to see the 4 rebels hanging there. I came face to face with him for an instant, but the sight of the mutilated bodies kept me from noticing the face of the man who had directed it all, the face I was now about to take into my hands. So, what was the exhibition that was held in the town? Four of the troops on the Babur side had been captured, they had been hung, and their bodies had been carved with knives, they had been mutilated, and in that exhibition, the Baba had come face to face with this butcher of a soldier, and he was aghast at what he had seen. So he didn't notice the face of the soldier, but that very soldier who had directed that execution was now in the Baba's power. It was not an unpleasant face, certainly, and the beard, which made him seem a bit older than he was, didn't suit him badly at all. So the soldier's face is not unpleasant, and the beard made him look a bit older than he actually was, and it suited him quite well. His name was Tellez, Captain Tellez, a man of imagination, because who else would have thought of hanging the naked rebels and then holding target practice on certain parts of their bodies? So the exhibition that had been held in the patio of the school in the town was that the rebels had been hung, and then the soldiers of Captain Tellez, that is the name of the soldier, he had ordered target practice to be held on the bodies. So the soldiers of Captain Tellez had fired at certain parts of the hung fighters on the Baba's side. I began to apply the first layer of soap. With his eyes closed, he continued. Without any effort, I could go straight to sleep, he said, but there's plenty to do this afternoon. So he says, without any trouble, he could go straight to sleep, but he had plenty of work to do that afternoon. I stopped the lathering and asked, with a faint lack of interest, a firing squad. So the barber stops his lathering of the soldier, Captain Tellez's chin, and he asks with a pretended lack of interest if Captain Tellez was going to hold another firing squad. Something like that, but a little slower. So he's going to execute the rebels he's got a bit slower than a firing squad. So continues. I got on with the job of lathering the beard. My hands started trembling again. The man could not possibly realize it, and this was in my favor. So now he's going to have Captain Tellez in his power. He's going to hold the razor against his throat, and this opportunity that he has to finish off the leader of the enemy camp makes him scared and excited at the same time. His hands start to tremble, but he thinks that Captain Tellez could not have possibly realized this. So this steadiness which he seems to have seems to be in the favor of the barber. But I would have preferred that he hadn't come. It was likely that many of our faction had seen him enter. So the barber says he prefers that Captain Tellez had not come into his barber shop, because many on his side, on the rebel side, on the barber side, would have seen Captain Tellez enter the barber shop. And an enemy under one's roof imposes certain conditions. So Captain Tellez was the barber's enemy, but because he was under the barber's roof, it imposes certain conditions. I'd be obliged to shave that beard like any other, carefully, gently, like that of any customer. So he says that his, his sense of duty would make him he- would make him treat the that is, he would make him treat Captain Torres like any other customer. He'd shave Captain Torres's beard carefully and gently, taking pains to see that no single pore emitted a drop of blood. He'd be very careful to shave Captain Torres and be careful to see that not even a single pore on the skin would emit a drop of blood. He'd be careful not to nick Captain Torres, being careful to see that the little tufts of hair did not lead the blade astray. He'd be careful to see that the small clumps of hair growing on Captain Torres's chin would not lead his blade astray and nick his skin. Uh, being Seeing that his skin ended up clean, soft, and healthy, so that passing the back of my hand over it, I couldn't feel the hair. So, at the end of the shave, he would pass his hand over the chin of Captain Torres to see that the shave and the skin had been soft and healthy. Yes, I was secretly a rebel, but I was also a conscientious barber and proud of the preciseness of my profession. So the barber is secretly a rebel who is against the occupiers of that town, and Captain Torres is on the enemy side. He is on the conqueror, on the leader, on the victor side. But the barber is conscientious and is proud of the preciseness that is required of his profession to see that no nicks have been made on customer's skin and everything is done perfectly. So he is proud of the preciseness of his profession. And this 4 days growth of beard was a fitting challenge. So he thinks that Captain Torres's 4-day beard is a challenge for him. I took the razor, opened up the two protective arms, exposed the blade, and began the job from one of the sideburns downward. So the hair growing next to the ears is called the sideburns. He opens up the razor and starts to shave from the sideburns downward towards the chin. The razor responded beautifully. His beard was inflexible and hard, not long but thick. So the beard, Captain Torres, was a thick beard, and it was not long hair, but it was thick hair, and it was inflexible and hard. Bit by bit, the skin emerged. The razor rasped along, making its customary sound as fluffs of lather mixed with bits of hair gathered along the blade. So as the shave continues, little bits of the beard get stuck on the razor and fluffs of hair mixed with lather gathered along the blade. I paused a moment to clean it, then took up the strop again to sharpen the razor because I'm a barber who does things properly. So he wants the razor to be at its sharpest, so he sharpens it again. The man, who had kept his eyes closed, opened them now, removed one of his hands from under the sheet, felt the spot on his face when the soap had been cleaned off, and said, "Come to the school today at 6 o'clock." So Captain Torres feels the part of the chin that has been shaved, and he invites the barber to come to the school today, that day at 6 o'clock. "The same thing as the other day?" I asked, horrified. "It could be better," he replied. "What do you plan to do?" asked the barber. "I don't know yet, but we'll amuse ourselves." Once more he leaned back and closed his eyes. I approached him with the razor poised. He holds the razor. The barber approaches the captain with the blade held aloft. Do you, do you plan to punish them all? I asked timidly. All. The soap was drying on his face. I had to hurry. In the mirror, I looked toward the street. So he sees the reflection of the street in the mirror. It was the same as ever, the grocery store with two or three customers in it. Then I glanced at the clock, 2:20 in the afternoon. So the time at which Captain Torres enters is around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The razor continued on its downward stroke. Now from the other side burned down. Now from the other side of the face, from the side burned down, the barber continues to shave. A thick blue beard. He should have let it grow like some poets or priests do. Uh, it would suit him well. So the barber thinks Captain Torres should have let the beard grow, and it was like a blue beard. The hair is blackish blue, and it would have suited him well. A lot of people wouldn't recognize him. So if people didn't recognize him, that would be in Captain Torres's favor, because he is a man who spends his life in a great deal of danger, much to his benefit. I thought as I attempted to cover the neck area smoothly. There, for sure, the razor had to be handled masterfully. So now the sides of the chin have been shaved. Now it comes to the neck, near the throat. Since the hair, although softer, grew into little swirls, so on the neck near the jugular vein, the hair on Captain Torres's throat grew in little swirls. A curly beard, one of the tiny pores could be opened up and issue forth its pearl of blood. So the skin is softer on Captain Torres's neck. One of the pores on his neck would be opened up, and little pearl of blood would issue. A good barber such as I prides himself on never allowing this to happen to a client. So the barber is a conscientious barber. He has a sense of duty, and he wants to see to it that Captain Torres doesn't bleed even a single drop of blood in his barber shop. And this was a first-class client. How many of us had he ordered shot? How many of us had he ordered mutilated? It was better not to think about it. So many of the soldiers on the barber side had been shot, and their bodies had been cut up by Captain Torres. But the barber thinks it's better not to think about it. Torres did not know that I was his enemy. He did not know it, nor did the rest. It was a secret shared by very few, precisely so that I could inform the revolutionaries of what Torres was doing in the town and of what he was planning each time he undertook a rebel hunting expedition. So the barber is a secret spy on the side of the rebels, and he passes on information about the movements of Captain Torres and his expedition to the forces of uh, to the rebel forces who are fighting the enemy led by Captain Torres in the town. So it's going to be very difficult to explain that I had him right in my hands and let him go peacefully, alive and shaved. So it was going to be very difficult to explain to members of his own faction that he had Captain Torres where he wanted him. He could have cut Captain Torres' throat whenever he chose, but he had chosen to let him go alive and shaved. The beard was now almost completely gone. He seemed younger, less burdened by years than when he had arrived. So Captain Torres looks younger after the shave. I suppose this always happens with men who visit barber shops. They always look younger. Under the stroke of my razor, Torres was being rejuvenated. Rejuvenated because I'm a good barber the best in the town, if I may say so. So Captain Torres has revived, he's regained his youth under the care of the Baba, and the Baba says that he is the best barber in town, very modestly. A little more lather here under his chin, on his Adam's apple, on this big, vein. So he puts a bit more lather on the jugular vein. How hot it is getting. Torres must be sweating as much as I. So it's getting hotter and hotter. The barber starts to sweat and he thinks Captain Torres must also be sweating as much as he is. But he's not afraid. He's a calm man who is not even thinking about what he's going to do with the prisoners this afternoon. On the other hand, I, with this razor in my hands, stroking and restroking the skin, trying to keep blood from oozing from these pores, can't even think clearly. So the captain, who is going to carry out an execution, seems to be very calm, but the barber, who is doing his duty conscientiously, can hardly keep himself from trembling and shaking with his emotion because of his feelings. Damn him for coming, because I'm a revolutionary and not a murderer. So the Baba says that he's interested in revolution, in setting the town free, but he's not a murderer. And how easy it would be to kill him. And he deserves it. So Captain Torres, who's carried out so many executions in the town, deserves to be killed. Does he? No, what the devil. No one deserves to have someone else make the sacrifice of becoming a murderer. So, the Baba doesn't want to be a murderer. So even though it's Captain Torres who's so cruel and vindictive, doesn't deserve to be killed by the Baba. What do you gain by it? Nothing. What do you gain by killing someone? Nothing. Others come along and still others, and the first one kill the second ones, and the next one, and it goes on like this until everything is a sea of blood. So the barber, if he cut Captain Torres's throat, then someone else will come after him, and then after him someone else will come along. So it goes along until everything becomes inundated in a sea of blood. I could cut his throat just so, zip, zip. So I could just make two strokes with his wrist. He could just open up Captain Torres's throat very easily. I wouldn't give him time to complain, and since he has his eyes closed, he wouldn't see the glistening knife blade or my glistening eyes. So the barber, if he were to kill the captain, then his eyes would glisten with his excitement and it would glint, there would be a glint of madness. But Captain Torres has his eyes closed, so he wouldn't see what the barber may do. But I'm trembling like a real murderer. So it's as though he's really carried out the deed. Out of his neck, a gush of blood would spout forth onto the chest, onto the chair, onto my hands, on the floor. I'd have to close the door, and the blood would keep inching along the floor, warm, ineradicable, uncontainable, until it reached the street like a little scarlet stream. So the blood would flow into the street, and everyone would notice. I'm sure that one solid stroke, one deep incision, would prevent any pain. So it would be done in an instant. Captain Torres would die in a millisecond. He wouldn't suffer. But what would I do with the body? Where would I take it? Where would I hide it? I wouldn't have to flee, leaving all I have behind, and take refuge far away, far, far away. So the barber would have to give up his profession, he'd have to give up his life, and he'd have to seek shelter far, far away after killing Captain Torres. But they would follow until they found me. So Captain Torres's men would follow him until they found him, Captain Torres's murderer. He slit his throat while he was shaving him, a coward. So he didn't fight Captain Torres, they would say. He would slit his throat while he was uh, resting in his chair, they would say, and they would call him a coward for not facing Captain Torres face to face bravely. And then on the other side, the avenger of us all, a name to remember, and here they would mention my name. He was a town barber. No one knew he was defending our cause. So on his side, on the barber side, they would praise him. They would call him an avenger, and they would make his name remembered for a long time. And they would mention that he was a town barber, the spy who passed on information of the enemy's movements and the defender of their cause. So one side would call him a coward, and the other side would praise him. And what of all that? So what is his opinion? What are these opinions they have? Murderer or hero? So would he be a murderer or a hero? My destiny depends on the edge of this blade. So his future, what is going to become later, depends on what he's going to do now. I can turn my hand a bit more, press a little harder on the razor and sink it in. So all he has to do is press a little harder and the razor would do its job and Captain Torres would die. The skin would give way like silk, like rubber, like the straw. So the skin would easily be opened up by the sharp razor. There's nothing more tender than human skin, and the blood is always there, ready to pour forth. A blade like this doesn't fail. It is my best. But I didn't want to be a murderer. No, sir. You came in here for a shave, and I performed my work honorably. I don't want blood on my hands, just lather, that's all. So, the barber again says, is reminded of the sense of duty. He says that, he says conscientiously that he performs his work honorably and he doesn't want blood on his hands. He just wants lather on his hands. Just lather, that's all he wants on his hands. You're an executioner and I'm only a barber. Each person has his own place in the scheme of things. So the Captain Torres may be more powerful and the barber may be on a scale far lower than the captains in the scale of power, but every person has his own place in the scheme of things. That's right, his own place. Now his chin had been stroked clean and smooth. The man sat up and looked into the mirror. He rubbed his hands over his skin and felt it fresh, like new. Thanks, he said. He went to the hanger, for his belt, pistol and cap. I must have been very pale. My shirt felt soaked. So the barber feels the weight of his feelings. He's been sweating throughout this incident. Torres finished adjusting the buckle, straightened his pistol on the holster, and after automatically smoothing down his hair, he put on the cap. From his pant pocket, he took out several coins to pay me for my services, and he began to head toward the door. In the doorway, he paused for a moment, and turning to me, he said, "They told me that you'd kill me. I came to find out. But killing isn't easy. You can take my word for it." And he turned and walked away. So Captain Torres had intentionally placed himself in the barber's hand and pretended not to know anything about the barber's secret of being a revolutionary. So he came to see what the barber would do, but the barber's sense of duty protected him and saved him from certain death in Captain Torres's hand. So the sense of duty of the Baba saves him from being executed along with the other rebels in the group. So that is his story, just Lather, that's all.